the drawings, the illustrations on that mat were spoons, teaspoons, cups, and so it called my attention. The sacred measure really struck me, because first my action, I don't know where that came from, and where that but I thought sacred memory. It kind of stayed with me, and something that looked so profane on one hand, the measuring cups, the teaspoons, and all of that, and the sacred. And though, as sometimes our mind works, I got caught with that sacred. And then slowly it opened up, and I realized that indeed on that little mat with those measuring spoons, and there was actually a deep, deep truth of life, which is that there's always a certain measure, there's always the need for balance, and that indeed it's a sacred principle of life, and that of course that we tend to forget. So yes, indeed, measuring cups, cooking is certainly a place where the importance of that measure really comes to the front, to the surface. Something that's too salty is not good. And of course, in our recipes, we use so much of this, so much of that. And of course, there are different tastes, and some people like it more sweet, more. But basically, there's still a range, a measure, a sacred measure beyond which we cannot, like too salty, for example, since we talk about winter. In Taoism, salt is a taste that corresponds to winter, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So something that's overly salty, and like, for example, we cannot drink seawater because it would kill our kidneys. We are not made for that. And yet, in our blood, in our tears, in our sweat, we do have salt. So here again, as human beings, it's that blessed measure. And from there, it also opened up basically everything, meaning that when you think about Buddhism, the middle way that is taught in Buddhism is actually another version of that sacred measure. And we know from the story that is told about the Buddha that he tried asceticism. Is that the word in English? Asceticism. Asceticism, and came to the conclusion or the awareness of the middle way. And what came to me is that maybe we do not understand enough, or at least I did not understand enough, the depth of that middle way, meaning that it's really a principle of life, and that at all points, at every moment, the life that is in us seeks balance, and we are always seeking balance. It's part of impermanence, it's part of interdependence. We seek balance with our external environment. We seek balance within our internal environment. So that's an important principle of being attuned to the needs of season. And that's where the principles of Taoism are so beautiful and so profound, and a bit like the middle way or the sacred measure. If we deepen that, if we really listen to that, we find some important guidelines for our life. So first of all, I would say I had a teacher who used to say that the best way to strengthen our immunity and the best way to develop health was actually to be exposed to the 4 seasons. So if we feel really bad right now or don't enjoy the cold, we can remember that it's actually helpful for our immunity, because again, it forces us, the 4 seasons or the 5 seasons, force us to seek that balance, and of course, as human beings, we tend to enjoy, what is comfortable, and whatever puts us out of our comfort zone, we tend to resist. So right now we have, in that seeking balance, in that sacred measure, we have winter. And winter has already begun in the lunar calendar, and officially on the 21st of December at the solstice. But notice that at the solstice, already the balance of life makes it so that the light is coming, is increasing slowly. So what does it mean in Taoism that cold kidney is associated with winter? One meaning is that kidneys represent our winter energy in us. We all have it. So we could say that and it's water energy, winter energy, cold energy. So the nature of our kidneys is to be cooling. And of course they need the winter, and at the same time, because they are already cold in nature, water is already cold, cooling in nature. So one principle that is important to help with our health is to warm our kidney energy during the winter. And so people of old have always known that. So I'm thinking of in Japan, for example, especially older people, they wear, that belt. What's it? Oji? The obi. The obi belt that they wear. And farmers, I know in France, farmers did exactly the same thing. They would wear in the winter, in particular, this thick cotton or wool obi to underneath their clothes to keep warm. And of course, we don't want to get too hot either. It's really to keep warm. The center of heat energy, fire energy, is the heart. So keeping our heart warm means to have just enough warmth in our kidney to also cool the fire of the heart. So when I said in my title, warm heart and soft mind, the heart in Taoism is also the center of our psyche. So if we know how to balance, to find that sacred measure, we will keep a balance between the fire of the heart and our mind and the coolness of our kidneys. So that water energy in Taoism is very interesting. What it is associated with is salty taste. So that means in winter, we can eat a little bit more salty than other seasons. The kidneys represent our ocean energy. You know, that's if you go deep in the ocean, that's the coolest place, the coldest place. And so it represents our deep, deep energy. And it does need the fire of the heart, the warmth of the heart to come to the surface. And so the salty taste, sea vegetables, for example, which are, strong kidney energy, are very good in the winter. And sacred measure means we don't need to eat tons of sea vegetables in the winter, but we can eat more in the winter. And in particular, like the soup form, the traditional Japanese way of having a broth. And in the Japanese tradition, actually, of cooking tradition, they say that the miso soup recreates our birthing environment, meaning the ocean, where you have salt, the water, and the sea vegetable. So, and as I remember also, as both in Chinese medicine and in cooking with macrobiotic cooking, our teachers sometimes making fun of Westerners because we tended to overdo everything. So that, for example, miso soups at the beginning, were thick with sea vegetables. I remember Chokushi saying, look, the ocean, just if there's too much sea vegetable, there's a problem. We're out of that range of sacred measure. I remember also in China, where all my colleagues carry their herbal tea to work, with gojis, for example. Goji are very good also, correspond also to that kidney. They nourish the water energy. So when we learn that, of course, it's like, gojis are good, other plants that were good. And same thing, my colleagues, discreetly laugh at the Westerners because we could all just seeing the herbal tea, which ones were made by Westerners, because Chinese would, have a few plants at the bottom of their teacup. It was not really teacup, it was more like a gourd. And the Westerners, you could sometimes hardly see through. So thick was it with whatever goji is. And so I learned certainly part of that sacred measure, that what, we say in our language, more is not necessarily better. But so, for example, plants that are good in the winter and that can warm our kidneys, it's gentle, warm energy. So, for example, cinnamon is a great plant for kidney energy in the winter. And certainly we can use cinnamon in many, many ways. And we underestimate, and we don't do justice to this herb, using it just, in our apple pies. If you look in the yogic tradition, in Ayurveda, Chinese tradition, in Arabic tradition, all medicine traditions, cinnamon is always a very revered herb. Again, that doesn't mean that we tons of it or drink, strong cinnamon tea every day, except if there is an imbalance, that we can certainly use it. If we understand that energetic of winter, the roots of vegetable, burdock, daikon, they have this deep energy. They grow under the soil, or what grows deep. Just the same way that kidney energy is the deepest energy in us. So in Daoist tradition, what is associated with kidney energy is also our structure, our bones. And we also say in Daoism that kidney energy is prenatal energy. So what does it mean, prenatal energy, or the bone, the structure? One way our Western mind can get hold of that through what we know in our science today is we could talk about the genes, genetic energy. So kidney does correspond to what we understand through DNA. It is our DNA. And at the same time, it's wider than that. What corresponds to our DNA, and of course, we also know that our scientists today can track DNA through the bones. When we find bones of foals or whatever animals, through the analysis of DNA, we can find the history and even what dinosaurs have been eating. And so my personal take on that is, just like our technology today is able to see so far in the past, or we could say an eternal present, but what's in the bone. I am convinced that if we continue to evolve, if our civilization lives long enough to be able to develop, at some point we'll be able to see the DNA even in little bits and pieces, like little bit of shell on the beach and less of the bone, and probably at a further level in just the energetic environment, which of course it is said in the Buddhist tradition that enlightened in the Buddhist and yogic tradition, in many different traditions actually, in Taoism as well, that enlightened beings have access to all the memory of humanity. So we could say that kidney energy is also that sense of memory, DNA, old energy. So what does it mean, for us is that our prenatal energy, our DNA in that Taoist sense, is a very subtle energy that we carry, which is the energy of our ancestry. We carry it, in the color of our eyes, in our bone structure, and also in our emotional makeup. We might not see it, but we do, and Thich Nhat Hanh, for example, talks quite a bit about that in his talk, how we also carry the trauma, our ancestors, the trauma, and also their strengths, their resilience, that in our life, whenever we have, we recognize certain things that we might not like, it's like, I think that have the experience at some point of saying, I don't want to be like my mother, I don't want to be like my father, they did this, that was wrong, or they were like that. But actually, whether we rebel against it or whether we are unaware, we do carry that energy. And we tend also to like that so much, but really from that Daoist perspective, is that there's no end to that, meaning that the healing that we do in ourselves is also a healing we do for our ancestors. Whatever, for whatever reasons they were not able to finish, is passed on to us for us to deepen and to heal. So there's that prenatal energy needs the energy of the heart to come to our consciousness, the warmth of the heart, and we can say the compassion of the heart, the love of the heart, the softness of the heart to come to the surface. So what that means also in terms of taking care of ourselves is we need to strengthen our kidneys, warm our kidneys so that we don't extinguish the little pilot light that is within the kidneys that can come to the heart. So for example, in Qigong, I don't know as much but in Qigong, certainly, we have all kinds of body movements, exercises that are based on cooling the heart and warming the knees, meaning we need to have an energetic circle between the heart and the kidneys. If the kidneys get too cold, then paralysis, lack of cold freezing, right? And as human beings, we don't want to be frozen. That's not in our nature. So our chi, our movement, is warm and needs that movement. So warming the kidney also means moving, and of course the fireplace, whatever we know as human beings to use to get warm. And that's also what is going to keep the heart from overheating. Our heart needs to be anchored in our kidney energy. Actually, all of our organs need to be anchored in our kidney energy. So one of the things that it means, and that can be helpful to us, that is to know that as soon as any disease, any problem that's chronic, our kidney energy is off balance. Let me give you an example. If we catch a cold, we're exposed to cold rain and having enough clothes or whatever, or we are tired and so we are more fragile, and we catch a cold. Well, there our kidney energy is not necessarily involved, meaning we heal from the cold, and if everything is well, if it doesn't go any deeper, there's no kidney energy involved. As soon as we know that the problem is chronic, whether we talk about chronic fatigue, asthma, allergies, whatever it is that we know in ourselves is weakened, that means our kidneys are looking for help. If we realize that, I was thinking of that since we are in the midst of session right now, the silence, because kidney corresponds also to the ears and to hearing, but also listening. So one of the things that which invites us to do, that our kidney energy invites us to do, is to be able to listen to one another, because I'm sure we all have the experience of being in conversations that are not really conversations, where each person is within his or her story and talks about his experience, but doesn't have the curiosity to say to the other person, what's going on with you? And to listen, like I know in diagnosis, for example, it's an important quality to develop. And I remember, especially in my office in Asheville, there happened to be a hallway that led to my office. And if I was in a state of listening, meaning open, relaxed enough to really listen, I knew a lot about the person who came into my office before he or she came in. The noise of their steps, you can hear the tension in the steps, the way they open the door, the tension. And I was thinking about that because, of course, in one of those books, what is it called? The one on cooking?
The Tenzo Kyokun.
The Tenzo Kyokun. He has a beautiful image about how he would listen to the noises in the kitchen, and sometimes it would make him, I can't remember the words exactly, but how he would cringe when he heard the noise and the frying of hands, how they were handled. And I know Thich Nhat Hanh also talks about that. So this morning it came back to me suddenly because I realized there was some tension in me. And so I slowed down my gestures. And that's, of course, Qigong. So, holding, taking an object gently. And I know Tejo told us about, the bowls, for example, that learning put our bowls gently, trying not to make so much noise is part of the tradition, right? So how we handle the noises that we make, how we affect our environment with noise is part of kidney energy. Because of course, when we are in a rush, when we make a lot of noise, our heart is in fire. There's tension and we are contracted. So as soon as we remember that kidney energy, that's one way of relaxing our kidneys, is of course through breathing. Breathing deeply is a way of connecting kidney and lung energy. Through awareness, moving slowly, handling things slowly, listening to people, what is there in their voice. So of course, in diagnosis, the voice, our voice carries a lot. You know, if we listen to the voice of people, and it was said in Taoism that a good doctor could completely diagnose a person just from the sound of his or her voice. Because a few things is like the rhythm of our speech is more the heart energy. You know, like when we're excited, we talk really fast. When heart energy is agitated, when the fire is too much, we tend to speak fast. And notice that in our world right now, we are taught to speak fast. For example, on the radio, on TV, because there's, you know, time is expensive, a minute costs so much money. So people, they talk so fast to say the most in a very short time. And I know sometimes I catch myself, like even right now, I'm thinking, okay, and maybe that's because I'm in sitting, that might be helpful. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I won't be able to say everything I want to say. But even if I go too fast, then my heart is agitated, and then people can't hear or can't listen. So winter, and I'll probably end with that to give some time to questions. Winter is a really good season to enjoy soups, warmth, friendship, for the heart, because it needs light and warmth. To warm our kidneys, meaning it's a very bad time to eat ice cream. It's you know, to drink warm water. That's a tradition of Chinese medicine. Warm water is of course good for the kidneys, good for the stomach also, and will give us that warmth without overheating. You gentle spices also is good. Of course, resting, because it's a yin energy. So nights are longer and invite us to sleep longer. And, you know, Christmas time and all the festivities around the solstice, those are great in terms of light and warmth of the heart. Unfortunately, our consumer appetite makes it a very agitated time that wears our kidneys out and tend to develop chronic problems. So burnout, for example, is a good example of a disease that became chronic and became so unconscious that we went beyond it and did not hear anymore, did not listen anymore to the signals. And, you know, that's where we run into problems. Chronic diseases, but also accidents. Very often accidents are the result of our agitated heart and weak kidney energy. Because if you look at the most common diseases today, migraine headaches, hypertension, anxiety, they are all too much heat above, too much thinking, and weakened energy. So there's no grounding. So of course, Qigong in particular, I'm thinking of Qigong actually, maybe more so than yoga, maybe, because yoga is more of a warm and hot country practice. Qigong was born in the cold area. So, for example, you practice Qigong a lot standing up, meaning that the goal of Qigong is to strengthen the kidneys. In yoga, you are more in touch with the earth. So that's why, for example, there's Bikram yoga, because it's closer to the earth, which is cooler, you know. So that's why it's a good idea when we practice yoga to do it in a warm environment. When Qigong is practiced, if you go to China, you know, when I went, I hope it's still like that today. But certainly when I went to China, 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, you would see people wearing parkas, wearing hot clothes, and, you know, striking their kidneys to warm up the kidneys, and jumping to warm up, and walking, and gathering around trees to get the tree energy of nature. And they were wearing scarves, but they were moving. So that's really the concept of strengthening kidney energy. So I think that's kind of the outline of, you know, soft mind, warm heart, kidney energy, and I will open to questions if you have any specific questions or about this beautiful balance and sacred measure, and the sacred measure that winter invites us to incorporate into our life.
Yeah, I have a question. Like you mentioned, you know, the sort of like the holidays, there being that warmth of like love and family and loved ones, but also sort of that consumerism, which could also upset the balance. In general, what are some other like winter, whether it's diet or lifestyle that like affect balance? Like where are we likely to go off track?
Okay, well, you gave a good example. You know, it's like, okay, in Daoism, for example, joy is a quality of the heart, and at the same time, it has both aspects. It's a quality of the heart, but it's also the disease of the heart. It's both. And it really threw me off for quite a while, but I observed, you see, for example, in France, a soccer game, right? Wins, people are very joyful. And the fire of the heart is all excited. What do people do when the fire of the heart is excited? Well, they drink, they become violent, they get the champagne, which is, you know, champagne is recent in the history of humanity, and it's really not a great drink, because it's very sugary, and it makes you bubbly. So it's not a judgment on that, but certainly let's say that joy as a fire really has the nature of easily getting you off balance. So again, when we look at the fireplace, you know, we can see that too. So ideally, as human beings, we want to get our heart like embers, you know, that joy, but gentle joy, and know that fire can really get off. That's the nature of fire. And so we need to seek balance. And we can say, you know, if we drink too much during the holidays and have a hangover the next day, well, that's the body inviting us to sacred measure. the body is always seeking balance, homeostasis, always. So it's going to tell us what works and what doesn't. And if we listen, so, according to our situations, what we can handle. For example, I think I'm going to give one example for a recovering alcoholic, right? It might not be a good idea to attend a family reunion. A lot of drinking might not be strong enough. His kidneys are not strong enough. For somebody who is okay, they might be there and just decide when they want to go, and bring maybe something healthy. Then, in terms of gifts, how to gift something to the community or encourage people to give something to the community, to just, consuming. I mean, we all have creative abilities, and it's not easy. That sacred measure, sacred balance is definitely not easy, because there are all the cultural pressures, the family pressures. And, sometimes it might mean to say no, sometimes to say yes, sometimes to accept being a little bit off balance, but knowing that we have to get back to balance. So one of the things I would say, and people who have heard me or studied with me know that's my big one, watch for sugar. Sugar is really a killer. And I mean, I'm serious about that, very serious. It's a killer of immunity. It also, in terms of our moods, in terms of, I had actually an interesting experience not long ago. I shared with you too in another talk. I had a severe accident in May, and I was very careful when I came back home, from the hospital, to heal my spine, to have a really what I call an anti-inflammatory diet. So no sugar whatsoever. And I even avoided fruit. And I don't know if I was right or wrong about that, but I thought, I'm going to be very strict, because my spine was involved. So I didn't want to take any risk. And I really recovered really nicely. And a couple of weeks ago, we were invited to a friend who had done a nice vegetarian dinner and really gone out of the way to make something pleasant. And she had made a beautiful vegan dessert. No, no dairy, and she was so proud to say, no this, no this, no that, was, that your heart sutra, no this, no that. And so, like, oh, great. And of course, the one thing that there was that was not, it was lots of sugar. Lots of sugar. Meaning really, and because I'm not so used to that, I went, whoa. But again, I ate it, first of all, because I wanted to. I'm not going to blame it on my guest. And because she had really gone out of her way. And, it was all right. And then the same day, I can't remember, we had done a couple of things, maybe eaten some chips, meaning it was not an anti-inflammatory diet that day. And okay, no big deal, it's okay. But the next day, my body and my spine were so painful. So painful. Actually, even after my accident, my spine had never been that painful. So it was like, okay, wow, that's really an experience. And you know, I have neck pain easily. Well, I notice the same. As long as I eat all right, it's not that I don't feel it, but it's okay. So in order to keep the sugar is what makes us ADHD. It agitates the fire of the heart, and it weakens the kidney. It weakens our deep immunity. So we need to watch that around the holidays. And you can say we are a society addicted to sugar. We go from one sugar celebration to another, not too long without it. You know, it's like, yeah, Thanksgiving, yeah, Christmas, then there are a couple of long winter months. So we put Saint Valentine in there, you know, to get back to the chocolate and the sugar. Then after that, you have Easter. You know, it's like we always find reason. And of course, sugar, alcohol, they're very close. So if I would say, you know, something to strengthen our kidneys, to be mindful of, is our sugar consumption, for sure, because it weakens our deep, deep immunity. And in Daoist tradition, it is said that it's during the months when we don't have symptoms that we need to strengthen ourselves. They say to heal oneself when we are sick is like wanting to drink, to have to eat when we're thirsty. So the best time to strengthen ourselves is in prevention. And usually as human beings, we do the other way around. It's like, oh, I'm feeling good right now. I don't have any symptoms, so I can indulge, right? When the tradition says those, especially if we have a chronic disease like allergies or like anything chronic, when we don't have the heavy symptoms, is a good time to strengthen our kidneys and keep the energy. Does it answer your question?
No, that was helpful.
Okay.
One of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about the middle way is, you know, I've always kind of, from the very beginning, when I heard about the middle way, I was like, okay, what is the middle way? You know, I mean, I wasn't saying what's the way in this moment. I was saying, what is the middle way? Give me a definition of the middle way.
Right.
And one of the reasons why I like you to talk about these things as the seasons change is because I think that we constantly have to adjust to them and find what is the middle way for that time, you know. And of course, it doesn't happen seasonally, but it happens in every moment. But to be aware of it seasonally, one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking is this tendency for people. This is Sesshin now because I'm too busy. This happens every year for Rohatsu Sesshin.
Right.
Because we get this kind of momentum from about Thanksgiving until through Christmas. It just builds and builds. And one of the things I like most about Rohatsu Sesshin is it happens at that time of year when we really need to look at that momentum building and recognize the need to kind of slow down. And, you know, one of the things that I always find when I go home for Christmas is I'm always sick when I get back. You know, it's very difficult, like you see, to be in it. My family aren't drinkers, but they're sugar consumers. You know, at Christmas, there is a whole table full of sugar stuff, you know, and then there's a table with the soups and main and entrees, but everybody's over by the sugar table. And everybody wants you to try their stuff that they made. And I always get sick when I come home for Christmas. And I remember one Christmas when I came home and I was having a lot of stomach problems and throwing up and everything, like, you know. And I just thought, oh, I've got a virus, and my nephew had it too. And maybe it was a virus, but I called Liliane Myoren, And because when she was living in town and I said, you know, what can I take for this virus that I have? And she says, I don't think it's a virus. I think it's a food consumption issue. And she came over and started feeding me things that I was like, no, I can't eat. I'm not, don't give me anything. But she said, no, just try. I found that I was having problems with being, what is it, when you don't have enough fluids. Dehydrated. I was having dehydration problems and things like that, you know, I didn't even make that association until, you know, she kind of pointed to that. So, I mean, I think that, you know, this whole balance thing is something that we really need to think about all the time, you know, and particularly at these times of year, you know, and some people don't like the diet that we have for sashimi, for example, you know, but it really is a diet that takes us away from so much of that sugar imbalance, you know, that we create during these times. And some people love it because, you know, they'll walk out saying, wow, can I have a copy of that diet because I feel so much better when I eat in that way, you know. Yeah, thinking about with regard to that is, you know, I don't really particularly like to cook. There's other things I'd rather be doing than spending time. We were talking about the other day about how much time it takes to prepare good, healthy food and have vegetables and stuff like that. So I have this tendency to want to say, okay, just give me the diet and I'll just follow the diet, you know, without any consideration for balance. And it's just I've noticed it's just a form of attachment that I just want it, you know, I have to be enlightened so I don't have to practice so much anymore. You know, like enlightenment is a state of mind that you can just continue with. You know, and we do that in a lot of aspects of our life. You know, just give me the diet that will make me balanced. And of course we all have different bodies too. And so we have different needs. So there's so many different aspects to this. And yeah, you know, it's part of our practice, you know, to not ignore bodies. You know, it's part of spiritual practice to not ignore our bodies. You know, so anyway, that's the reason that one of the reasons why I like to, you know, talk about this at least seasonally, at least when the seasons are changing. And today's really cold, so this is a good time to talk about what you're bringing up, you know, to consider that kind of thing.
And actually, you know, two things in what you're saying is, even during the day, there are seasons. Morning corresponds to spring, noon corresponds to summer, afternoon. So our organs also, just what we do for the season, we can apply it. You know, like winter corresponds to the yin time, late evening and night. So some of the same thing. So, for example, evening or night is not it's not a good time to eat a meal that needs digestive fire, because the fire is weak, you know, just like in winter. The best, like in Ayurveda, for example, they do recommend whatever is acidic or needs more digestion to eat it at noon, you know, not in the evening. So there's a microcosm in every day of the seasons. The other thing that's, I think, very important in what you said, and that's why I'm saying the middle way, I need to deepen it, because indeed, it's always changing. And you know, one thing that is know that the Buddha did go to asceticism first, and then came back from it. So that's part of the human journey. We make mistakes. We're gonna go off. But there is this beautiful gift that of seeking balance. Always, you know, and if we listen, we know it. Unless we get so off balance that we cannot hear it anymore. But let's say that we make all many mistakes. And, you know, that's okay if we can still hear that seeking balance, that needs, that for sacred measure. And to me, I get comfort knowing that the Buddha too went ori, and he said, oh, that's not working, this act, So, and there are many stories like that. So it's not some kind of perfection, where, there's always, sometimes it takes us a while, but as long as we can hear and come back to center, there's, hope.
And that listening is really listening to our bodies too. It's listening to what's around us and our environment, like, is it winter? Is it, but it's also, constantly noticing how these foods affect us. And I've noticed that the more that like recently I got into a sugar thing, it's really a drug. But when I don't have sugar around it, I'm more moderate about how much I take in, then I will notice when the sugar when I'm off balance with the sugar, but otherwise we don't even notice what it is that's causing the problem until we kind of step back and pay attention to how we're feeling.
Yeah. Conversations actually are great. An image that someone used one time that I've heard is that when the floor is very dirty, you don't notice when there's one more stain. But when the floor is clean, you notice if there is a stain. So when we make some order in our lives, we listen, we notice better what is going on.
The other thing I was thinking about sugar is, and this comes from Europe, we Americans have picked it up, is that the go-to thing for breakfast is something sweet. And one of the things that you pointed out to me a long time ago in terms of Chinese medicine is that, we get dehydrated at night. So eating sweet in the morning is not such a good thing. Really, we need to do things to hydrate. And that's why for example, we have the kanji in the morning.
And especially in winter.
And Japan, in the monastery diet is a macrobiotic diet. And one of the things that got me into the particular kind of food that Liliane has to offer is that I felt so good with the Japanese, with that macrobiotic diet in the monastery. We had a very good diet. And I came back and there were certain foods that I noticed, if I had to stay away from. One of them was sugar. We did have a lot of sugar in the monastery, and I did get sick from it, but I noticed that my Japanese roommates, they moderated how much sugar they took in, even though people constantly were giving us sugar, and I was like always consuming, oh yeah, I'll eat yours, and then at a certain point I thought, this is really, but it is how was hard to change diet.
Yeah, in this season in particular, it's hard because there's a whole consumption society tradition that just invite you. I know personally that one thing that accelerated my mother's death, she was diabetic, so but Christmas, everybody offered her sugar. And it was, come on, she's diabetic, we're trying to make a healthy meal. And on January 7th, and I knew she was eating the sweets, in the morning. And in my mind, there's no proof of that, but I'm pretty sure it contributed to her fall. And, doctors do say that after the holidays, that's when there's the most death, the most disease, they're all overwhelmed. So yeah, it's, and the World Health Organization has, diabetes is the first disease that they put along epidemics, because it's developing at the same rhythm, at the same rapidity same speed as epidemic diseases. All countries, all the world. So that's another discussion, but earth energy and yeah. Just sugar, but sugar is a big part.
Are you watching the time? Joe?
We're quite past. We're
Oh, we're
like,
past?
it's 11:08.
Oh, sorry.